Hi there. Welcome back to another episode of the Zoom In, Zoom Out podcast. A podcast where three woefully underqualified hosts, that is myself, Akash Vikram Shroff, and my co hosts Pat Behani and Aryan Chaudhary, try to help our guests help our audience learn some insightful things by having wonderfully qualified guests on to make up for our inadequacies and to sort of provide some relief to our nonsense rambling. Today we have on the wonderful Anjali Surana.
So Anjali is an 18-year-old student from Calcutta who's really passionate about gender rights, economics without maths, and making the world a better place for dogs, of course, not necessarily humans. But she's been really involved, and she started this nonprofit called FullStopp. And because of that, she's been getting eye rolls from aunties because it tackles menstrual inequality. And that has given her all the more reason to continue the work she's doing. She is now going to be going to Stanford to study economics.
We're so grateful to have you, Anjali. When Parth and Akash told me about your nonprofit organization, Full Stop, I was really interested in finding out what you're doing there. Could you tell us a little bit about what Full Stop is?
Yeah, for sure, I'd love to. But just as a disclaimer, I'm as underqualified as you are to be on this podcast.
Thank you for
But
making us feel nice about ourselves.
so Full Stop's a youth-led nonprofit that's trying to change the way the world perceives periods. So we're working under three pillars of access, awareness, and advocacy. As for the access part of it, we're trying to make sure that more menstruators have access to period products and don't have to be forced into using alternatives such as rags, old cloths, newspapers, etc. So we keep doing these distribution drives in marginalized and underserved communities. As for the awareness part of it, we host menstrual hygiene educational sessions in underprivileged communities, talking about the biology behind periods, busting myths and superstitions, and just facilitating safe spaces to talk about this topic. And as for the advocacy part of it, we just want menstrual hygiene to be as normal a conversation as talking about last night's dinner. So running social media campaigns and other on-ground and offline and online projects to just really normalize conversations about this and bring more changes at a structural level.
Yeah, I think that's super cool. And I really like that it's just not just about awareness about a single thing, but it's really multi-pronged to really try and help this issue. So what did you, how did you start it? What made you initially want to do this?
For sure. So I think I've been like a feminist long before I knew a word such as feminism even existed, right? Gender equality seemed really common sense to me. And as I grew up, I was like escaping the bubbles I was a part of. And I realized that what seemed common sense to me was not as common as I'd hoped for. So that's when I really wanted to start contributing to the issue and just, do something more substantial. So I went around NGOs in Calcutta and asked them if they can take me on as a volunteer. But all of them told me that they can't accommodate a 15-year-old volunteer for understandable reasons. So for me, it was kind of like, hey, if I can't find a seat at the table, I just decided to make my own. So that's when I started Full Stop. And today we're an entirely Gen Z run organization. And while we're obviously focused on tackling menstrual inequity, one of the secondary aims is also to provide opportunities to young people who might not get those opportunities elsewhere, like I didn't. Yeah.
That's really wonderful, and that bit you mentioned about about approaching different NGOs and asking them whether you could be a part of it, and they're like, "We can't take a 15-year-old." I think I faced something similar when I was starting out All Pink, and for all those who don't know, All Pink is a student-led organization like Full Stop that I started that aim to spread awareness about breast cancer. Now, an issue that I faced, and I think that a lot of students face, is people don't really want to take you seriously. And I mean, for good reason. You're a kid, naturally, so they don't generally trust your ability to either be serious about these sort of topics or to have the sort of commitment that these topics warrant, to have the drive that these things warrant. So how have you managed to tackle that perception issue? How have you got other people to sort of take you seriously?
Well, it definitely hasn't been easy, and I can't say I've like managed to make people take me seriously because I still enter like rooms and people are just like, "Hey, but aren't you a little young to be here?" But I think it just sort of comes with time. I think it's an obstacle that I'm always going to have to face, at least in the near future. But one thing I've realized is that I think growing up, the older generations always portrayed change making to me as a super complex, complicated task, right? And to me, change making became unachievable. It became an intangible thing, right? Like I could never do anything. But I think with time I realized that it, like, I know that I can't change the world, but I can change, my little world around me, in whatever ways, right? So for me, it was just about recognizing the small yet ample opportunities around me, in which I can create a change. And I think just acknowledging and acting on those small opportunities led to like a huge impact, collectively. Today, Full Stops donated over 1.2 million products, made
Wow.
products. I've hosted awareness sessions with like over 8,000 menstruators. And we've done like, brands like Bajaj and Zomato have approached us to do their CSR. And I feel like, once you just start getting momentum and you tell people that like, hey, I'm getting like, excuse my language, but I'm getting shit done, I think that's when people will just like start taking you a lot more seriously. Not that they do, it's not that easy, but it's a lot easier than before. Yeah.
Yeah, and honestly, yeah, I think I fully agree because I can sort of relate. I mean, obviously not to the scale that Full Stop has done, but even with All Pink, when you start getting shit done, that's when people actually start realizing that you know what, maybe they actually know what they're talking about, and this is something that we should pay attention to. And that idea of not trying to change the whole world, but change the small world around you, I think that's a wonderful message, because a lot of people want to like aim for the massive thing, and that's a very good thing to aim for that, but that can also be very daunting and sort of demotivating, where you're like, there's so much I have to change, how can I alone do something like that? But realizing that even making these small changes around you can actually have such a wonderful impact, I think recognizing that, at least through the case of Full Stop, is something that's very empowering. And yeah, that's really wonderful to hear.
What have your
Yeah.
experiences been like, Akash? How did you like tackle, being young and still trying to do something that is not associated with young people doing?
Yeah, I think it was definitely a challenge, especially with stigmatized topics like breast cancer, like menstruation. There's people are less willing to speak about those, and especially to kids. That isn't a topic you'd imagine having with a 16, 17-year-old, a topic of conversation. But just, I think a lot of people need to get over. I'm talking about people who you want to take you seriously. So that, say, a medical professional or doctors or companies, a lot of them need to sort of observe that you're capable of getting their respect or getting their acknowledgement that you can take it seriously. And so actually getting stuff done helps a lot, like in your case as well. Because I remember early on in All Pink, we were trying to set up this breast cancer screening camp for the underprivileged. And we were working with this hospital, and they were very surprised to see like a bunch of 16-year-olds come and set up the camp, all of that stuff. And so in the camp didn't go according to plan because the hospital actually postponed the date of the camp without informing us. They were like, "Y'all are kids, y'all will manage, right? It's fine. We didn't think this date would be good." And this is on the day of the camp. We've arrived with our full kit, and they're like,
Wow.
"No, y'all can do it next week, no?" And at that point, like, there's obviously so much frustration, but you have to realize that you have to sort of try to see where they're coming from. And I mean, it's not a very responsible thing on their part either, but again, if you're a kid and you're trying to prove yourself, sometimes you have to go that extra mile. So you have to like keep following up. You have to keep being more proactive than, say, someone older would have to do. And to be honest, while when I was going through that process, I was really annoyed by that, and I was like, why do we have to do this? But I mean, it makes sense logically, because people are like, you're more likely to drop out of these plans that you're making. So you have to show them that, no, you know what, I'm going to take this seriously and I'm actually going to get stuff done. So yeah, that's definitely something that I've experienced before. But it's wonderful hearing that I'm not alone, that you've gone through the same thing.
Yeah, this is so impressive work, both you, Anjali, and Akash. And Parth mentioned something like eye rolls that you were getting from aunties because you were talking about stigmatized topics. But once you have such an established nonprofit organization, I'm assuming you also got hate online. Did you have to go through that whole thing, Anjali?
Oh yeah, for sure. A
Getting
lot of it, in fact. In fact, I think this school was hosting a fest last week, and they invited me to just like talk in the opening ceremony, or just some panel discussion that was going on. And like, there was like a teacher that was just like introducing me. And I don't think she had read my introduction before I got the stage to speak. Um, and during the introduction, as she saw the word like menstrual hygiene, she just stopped. And she waited for 5 seconds and she really like whispered the word. And I know that she cut the word period out entirely in like so many, because I had to write my introduction myself and like send it to them, right? And I know the word period was mentioned at least 3 times and she just cut it off entirely. She's like, she has distributed a million products. She just didn't mention the word period. So I don't think like no matter what your impact has been, no matter the scale of your organization, I think it's really hard to like break through social conditioning at times, and talk about this. Even in my school, I think like I come from a fairly like liberal school. We talk about important topics. It's a co-ed school. We don't have uniforms. I think like, people think of us as like a cool school, but even in my school, I've never, every time I've wanted to use the washroom, and like refresh myself because I'm on my period, I never told like my teacher that, hey, I need to like go refresh myself because I'm on my period. It was always like, hey, can I just blow my nose or can I just use the washroom? And then when the teacher would say no, because they obviously think I'm trying to bunk the class or something, like I just have to like sit down. Right. Whenever I go to the washroom, I used to hide the pad under my sleeve on the way to the washroom. It was always, things like this. But yeah, as for the online hate part of it, I was actually rather surprised to get so much hate because I didn't think we were that prevalent or established on social media. But especially post COVID, I got so many messages with like the rape threats, insults, like abuses and stuff. And I think I blocked at least 120 like fake accounts from my personal profile. This is not even like the messages we get on FullStopp. Um, but I think post COVID, there's been a great shift towards the digital platform. People are just spending a lot more time on social media. And I think one thing that's happening is that people are forgetting that the person on the other side of the screen is a real human being, right? We're like, whenever we're texting somebody, especially if it's not somebody we know, it's a really like abstract figure, right? And that makes it a lot easier to say hateful things. I don't think the people who sent me these messages, if they were right in front of me, in person, would say these things to my face, right? But like social media just facilitates this kind of, like, it provides a platform for such conversations. Of course, there are pros, and this is definitely one of its cons. Um, and at first, I definitely get really angry. I had bad days where I was just like, I don't want to like work with FullStopp anymore. Why am I doing this? I felt really down. It really bothered me at first, and I think more than like bringing me down, it was just like a lot of anger and outrage. Um, but then, I was just, I don't know where this sort of like mindset change took place, but along the lines, I was just like, okay, instead of approaching this from a place of outrage, I think maybe I should start approaching this from a place of empathy. It's hard times. Everybody's going through a lot. Like our whole lives are upscaled, and we're just like living differently now. So that's when one day I got another hate message. I opened my request, and that like this message was just there, and I opened it, and instead of like arguing with that person, which is what I generally do, instead of like swearing back and stuff. I just wrote, hey, I'm so sorry that you're going through hard times, that you felt the need to come and, like spread hate and send a message to somebody you've never even spoken to before. But hey, these are some like mental health pages and organizations that should make, like therapy and other help accessible to you. I hope this helps and, like have a great day. And I did that, and I didn't really expect a response because that's generally what happens. But once I did that, that person actually opened up to me, and they were like, um, you're right. I just was having a hard time. I don't know why I had to go and like send such a hateful message to you. And we actually ended up having like a good conversation. I don't know who they are, provided some constructive criticism about FullStopp as well, which I really like to connect upon. And yeah, I did that with like every single hate message I got henceforth. Like it was just a dark message I had saved. And I obviously didn't get responses from everybody, but like a lot of the people, like a large chunk of the people actually responded and were like, this is really kind, thank you, this has helped me. And yeah, like I think, and I'm not trying to like moral police anyone or tone police and say that, hey, if you're the victim of online hate, this is how you should respond. Because everybody has different bandwidths and mind spaces. And like you don't like, I'm not going to hold you to a double standard and say that this is how you should act. This is just something I did and worked for me, and this is definitely something I'm going to carry forth. Not just online, even offline. With my grandmother as well, I used to get really angry at her previously because she used to like, she didn't like me when I was like entering the kitchen when I was menstruating and things like that, right? But I think it just took. I mean, for me as well, I used to think like blood was impure, it was dirty. But I unlearned and I relearned, right? My grandmom didn't have the opportunity to do that because she didn't go to the kind of school I did. She doesn't know English. She got married at 16, right? So I also definitely need to acknowledge the privilege that I'm coming from. And just the scope that I got to, like break through my social conditioning and really see the world in a different way. So even now when I'm entering menstrual hygiene sessions, there have been times where I've said like, hey guys, I'm Anjali and I want to talk to you about period hygiene. There was this one girl I remember in a menstrual session. She spat at the floor every single time that I said the word period. And at that point of time, I was really angry. It just made me really angry, But now I generally come from a more empathetic and understanding place. And just sort of like acknowledge why certain taboos, superstitions, and just cultures exist in society, and being more cognizant of the fact that my 2-hour session is not going to change the mindset. We need more integrated structural changes. But these sessions are important just to spark that initial conversation.
Yeah, wow, that's
yeah.
that's quite an incredible story, I think. And honestly, just like hearing about so many hate things online, be it cancel culture or hate groups, it's quite incredible that it's so easy to not recognize, like you were saying, that the other person that you're making comments about or the people you're making comments about are also real people behind the screen who are going to get affected by it. But the way you were able to change to responding with empathy, I think, is so powerful. In fact, in one of our previous episodes with our guest GP, he spoke about how he doesn't get offended now. Like he's reached a point in his life where he doesn't take it personally if someone says something against him, because it's more a reflection of where they are than where you are. Right? And I think just like recognizing that and using that would be a lot more powerful and a lot better way to make change or to talk to engage with other people, both for the other person who's saying that and for your own peace of mind. So yeah, it's really, really cool that you've been able to do that actually in practice, because it's a lot harder to do it than just talk about it. Yeah.
And just moving a little bit away from FullStopp, we spoke to you about your experience with online learning over the past year. And for everyone who's been in school, the three of us have been on a gap year, so we haven't experienced it like y'all. But it's been a sort of tumultuous existence having to study online entirely with no school. So could you just tell us a little bit about how that was and how that went for you?
Yeah, for sure. So, and like, I remember I shared this with you before as well. So, I had a really hard time learning online, and I will give you one example of it that should substantiate my claim. I globally topped math in my IGCSEs, and the next exam I gave was in class 12, and I got a 40 on 75. that's how hard it was for me to learn online. And I think it wasn't that like math became harder, right? Just the learning process became harder. The fact that I was going to school, meeting so many people, just that human interaction was super valuable to me, and I just didn't have access to it anymore. Um, and I don't know how to explain it. Just it's not just for math, just learning in general, right? For me, learning is not confined only to what we're learning within the four walls of the classroom, right? It's just there's so much learning everywhere. Literally starting from my ride to school, which is on an Uber, I'm talking to the Uber driver about, um, you know, like problems with Mamta Banerjee's policies or something like that, right? And I'm learning about I'm hearing from humans about their experiences, about their lived experiences. And these are not things you're going to learn, that openly in like by reading a newspaper or hearing a podcast, right? This is just invaluable human experience and, exposure that is unparalleled. Then just like next step going and like just greeting my security guard, having small talk with them, going up to class and like asking that person behind me for a pen and never having conversation with that person outside of that. It's these small like imperfections and just like these small conversations that really make the entire process complete, right? And that whole thing was missing. Especially like for me, I was super precautious during the whole pandemic. I think like from last March to this May, I've only stepped out like 10 or 12 times. So it was just, seeing my parents and my brother for a whole year. I mean, however much I love them, it's just not been easy being away from people. I was somebody before the pandemic. I used to leave home at like 6:45 to go for like basketball practice. Then I went straight to school from there. Then I went straight to like some other place, and I was generally outside from like 7 a.m. to like 7 p.m. And telling somebody who's out for literally half the day to stay at home for a year, for 12 months, that is really hard for me to cope with. I do understand that, learning can't come to a halt. You can't stop having school. Um, and I do understand that certain like structures and systems exist in society, and it's just the way the world works, and you can keep complaining or you can adapt and move on. But it's just been hard for me. Like I don't think
I
I'm not saying it's anybody's fault. I'm sorry, I think I cut you off.
No, definitely. It isn't anybody's fault, but it's just difficult, right? It's an experience for all of us. But before we like talk about learning and learning styles, things like that, I wanted to bring us back to what you spoke about for math, and you said how you went from being the topper in math to suddenly getting 14 on 75. And this makes me remember an earlier podcast episode where we were speaking about how like people have this sort of idea of themselves, this notion that you build up in your head, your identity, so to speak. And when anything sort of challenges that, it's really difficult to recover for it. So did you in any way find that happened with your math? Where I've had it before, where suppose you think you're like, oh, I'm really good at math, I'm really good at science, and then suddenly you don't do well, and that just entirely shatters your perception of yourself, rather than just, oh, I messed up once, it's fine. So did you think you had that by any chance?
I think I was personally very cognizant of the fact that this is not because I didn't study enough or because I'm bad at math. I just didn't go to school for a lot of months because I
Yeah.
couldn't learn online. I was like, I'd rather do this myself. That was just working out better for me. If you look at my report card, my attendance is genuinely below 10%. I don't know how I got away with that. But so I knew that this is like, I knew this is, if there's any time I'm going to cut myself some slack, it's now. And I know that, like, me saying this was a lot easier for me to say than do it. There were times during this year where I felt so unproductive. I think there's a term languishing. I feel like I've been languishing for the past 1 year. And I mean, there are times when it's easier for me to cut myself some slack, but there are times when they're not, right? I'm sure we all face the same thing. But at least with my math exam, I was very cognizant of the fact that, okay, this is because I didn't go to school. Like, it's not that, so, I mean, you have to learn something to like write a test, right?
Yeah.
I just learned it at all. I went to the exam hall and I left half a paper blank And the two questions that I scored 14 on, which I don't know how, was like from my class 11 syllabus. So yeah.
Yeah, I can understand that whole process to be it's really challenging. Although I feel grateful that I had not I didn't have to go through online school. But through my gap year, with just the time off, like you mentioned, I think I learned a lot about my own systems and my learning styles and all of that. Did you also make discoveries about yourself, about your learning style, or something which you didn't expect to going through like such so much time off just by yourself?
I think one thing that this year has given me has been time. Saved a lot of time, didn't have to like transport to and from school every day and just got a lot of time for sure. And I think I use that time to, I've never been a rich consumer of, podcasts or literature or books, articles of AGDR and stuff. Definitely got a lot more time to explore that. And that has been great. In terms of setting in systems, I've always been a very wake up at 6 a.m. in the morning and makes the first thing I do is not check my phone but make like a to-do list for the whole day. And that's definitely been the same thing during the pandemic as well. Um, yeah, like I know that every day, like I was talking to this one mental health expert a few days back, and she was saying that it's a hard time, of course, for everybody, but one thing that really helps is just having systems in place, right? Um, and it's always harder to do anything for the first 5 minutes of what you're doing. So for me, if I had to study, just getting up and sitting on the table is the hard part, not having to study for an hour. So for me, like I just like made myself a promise that what I'm going to do is I'm going to get up from the bed and I'm going to study for 5 minutes. If after those 5 minutes I don't feel like studying, I will cut myself in slack and I'll go back to bed. But that didn't really
Yeah.
happen too often because
Yeah, yeah,
the hardest part is just getting to it,
yeah,
not really doing it. At least in my experience.
yeah.
So
That
yeah, just these small realizations. Also, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was saying that that's super cool. That was something we were talking about just recently, like Arihant, Akash, and I, about this idea of a 5 minute rule that if you have something that you need to do, make a deal with yourself that for 5 minutes you're going to do it, and after that you're allowed to slack off if you want. But more often than not, you end up doing it. It's that
Yeah.
starting that really becomes challenging, but then after that you get into the groove and you're able to continue doing that. Yeah, so that's awesome that so many other
Yeah,
people
for
also use similar methods and they work for them also.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me, I realized that I was using the 5 minute rule for a long time in like the other way. I was like, okay, just 5 minutes more. I'll just procrastinate for 5 minutes more. And then, I'm just gonna go. I'm gonna study for
And
five
that
hours.
became a full,
And then, yeah, I'm gonna get that 75
that
and
5 minute
75.
procrastination became a full two
Yeah.
hours.
N- yeah, yeah. And then I was like, okay, well, we have tomorrow. We've got some time. But yeah. Uh, Talking about like gap years, I think both Parth and I had to go through like the whole college application process all over again. And I'm guessing that because you were a senior at high school, you went through it yourself. And congratulations on getting into Stanford. Do you want to tell us about your college application experience and how you felt about it?
yeah, for sure. Before I talk about my personal feelings for it, I think one thing I say anytime anybody's talking to me about college is, um, and this is another thing I've realized in this one year actually. I did in retrospect so much before. Um, I used to be one of those people. If somebody told me I go to Harvard or I go to Stanford or Yale, I used to be like, oh my god, you're like the coolest person ever. Um, and I think just in this past one year, maybe a little longer, I just realized what a big privilege it is to even be applying to universities abroad in the US, especially. So many people don't even get to like think that far, even if they think that they could get to like I never had to worry about where I'm going to pay my stat application fee. I didn't have to worry about how I'm going to pay my application fee to well. And like I was applying to colleges with financial aid, and it was really like for me every time I was like, hey, is this college need blind? And most of the answers were no, right? And the colleges on the website like stated very explicitly that your ability to pay will affect whether you get into college. It's not even just about like the financial side of it. It's also like the social capital that you have, right? Having access to going to a school that has teachers who are trained in writing recommendations, right? I've been speaking to a few friends, and they've been telling me that, oh, my teachers don't even know what a transcript is. And that's when I just sort of realized, okay, I'm like really privileged and lucky and grateful to be able to go to a school where the process of applying to colleges abroad is smooth. So, yeah, just really wanted to acknowledge my privilege before I
Yeah.
talk about it. As for the college application process, I think I used to be really scared of it, and I know that people, like most of the people I've spoken to, like friends around me, have hated it. I personally love the college application process. Deadlines were definitely hard to meet. I still remember my Stanford application. I sent my teacher a message the day before. I was like, "Here's it too late to apply to Stanford," and she's like, "No, the deadline's tomorrow." And I said, "Okay, let me just go for it."
Wow.
Yeah. Screenshot, and I like, yeah. Yeah, in fact, I still remember the day I got in. She was one of the first few people I texted, and she just replied. She didn't say congratulations or anything. She just responded to that message with the message in mind. Like she scrolled up, she
Yeah.
found that message where I wrote, "Hey, is it too late to apply to Stanford?" Replied to that and sent a dot. So yeah. But anyway, like the process, I really loved it because I studied A levels, which is an international board, and I did get to like write a lot of essays and analysis stuff. But had to. I've never been forced to think about questions like what about learning excites you, right? This was one of the Stanford essays, for example, and I really really enjoyed just having the time to think about these things. I think oftentimes when these questions popped up, I was like, okay, you're wasting time, Anjali, you're slacking off, you're procrastinating, get back to work. But this was work for me, right? And this was not a short-term process. It wasn't, a 40-minute essay you're supposed to write in a test in your English class. I got like 4 months to think about these questions, to think about questions like, why do you want to study economics? Um, and that was definitely really insightful for me because I didn't have answers to these questions when I started, but I felt a lot more aware of these things after the 4 months. So I think that if you just look at this process without like the worries of deadlines, which should definitely be there because you have to meet your deadlines. But if you just like take a moment and realize just how great the process can be, I think it can be pretty good. I really enjoyed like the whole essay writing part.
Yeah, I fully agree, and I think especially on this podcast, we've spoken a lot about trying to find what you like about activities and reframe those activities within that scope, because then you're actually going to enjoy it. And I mean, I'm sure all of us, at least maybe not the three of us with our gap year, but that whole thing. You know what? Just finish off your college applications, then you'll be free. That freedom isn't a lot of fun. There's a lot of time to just do whatever, but the application process, the amount of stress that you sort of put on yourself just because it's the application process isn't worth it. So reframing it to be an idea of actually doing these sort of questions which might help you understand more about yourself, I think that's really wonderful. That's a really wonderful idea, and that's something we all can do, not only with application process for college, but for things in the future as well, jobs, post grad, that sort of stuff. Now, did you go through this? Your after college applications, you're going to be free. Did you fall into that trap?
Oh, for sure. I was really looking forward to. I mean, I love my school, but I was really looking forward to high school ending so I could have 3 months of not having to worry about deadlines or checking my mail every 2 hours. I was looking forward to it religiously, but now that I'm in that space, I absolutely hate it. And I think something. I mean, I think like my takeaway from this is that I've really been lucky to study whatever I wanted and do whatever I wanted. I don't think I've ever done anything just to get into college, for example, except for study. I've studied to get into college, but nothing apart from that. I've been a part of like, more UN, running my nonprofit, a bunch of like sports, a lot of other different things, right? But none of them has been motivated by the fact that I need this on my resume to get into college. And I truly mean that from the bottom of my heart. And I think maybe that's one of the reasons why I've been so passionate about everything I do and have like reached a decent place, at least in some of them. Because I never had that pressure of having to do something for anything with myself. Um, and yeah, because I had that sort of, rapport with all of my extracurricular activities, even with studies in class 9, I dropped all of the sciences. And that's not something people do. Like, everyone advised me against it. My school counselor told me, like, hey, at least take one science. But I just knew that this is what I want to study, this is what I want to do. And every subject I took, I genuinely enjoyed it. I never found like even studying for exam, except for like this past 1 year, just barring this 1 year, I've really enjoyed studying for boards. I've never been one of those people that's crying a night before any exam. Maybe for math, but not for other subjects. Um, so yeah, like I've just realized that whatever I've been doing, I've really like been able to choose what I want to do, and I've enjoyed everything I've done so far. And now that I don't have like anything to do about maybe like expand FullStopp for these 3 months, I'm really bored and I'm not enjoying it. But what about you? How has your gap year been? Have you felt the same?
Honestly, yeah. First of all, the idea of doing what you love is something that I really enjoy. And like something, even when people ask me about college, is what I tell them. Because if you do things just for the sake of it, you're not going to be passionate about it. And it becomes really evident. You're not going to learn anything from it. It's not going to help you. And at the end of the day, it's just pointless, right? And just doing things that you really enjoy is something that can be super great. Just for yourself, for your learning, and who knows, it could help you for other things as well, right? But yeah, honestly, like even especially the last few months, I've just been learning things like be it trying to learn like app development, maybe doing some gardening, and just random things that I just felt like doing just because I really enjoyed doing them, and just taking that time for myself to do what I want before before college starts, and again the entire schedule starts. But also, while you were talking to us about college, I think you mentioned that you got rejected from most of the places you applied to, and then just got into a few, which of course Stanford being one of them. So how is your process going through rejection? So how did you deal with rejections, and how are you able to make yourself get up after facing those as well?
Right. So I think I was really lucky because I got accepted early somewhere. I didn't even apply there early. They just sent me like a likely letter. And I knew that I had like a cushion to fall back on, and they gave me like 100% scholarship and stuff. So I was like, okay, I'm good. If I get rejected from every single place after this, I'll be okay. Like I'll live through it. But of course, I think before the Stanford decision, there was IB, and I had applied to a bunch of IBs, and I got rejected or waitlisted with all of them. But again, like I said, this 1 year has been so reflective in the sense that why do I want to go to like why let's for example Harvard. Why do I want to go to Harvard? Like is going to Harvard really that important to me? And I think like in grade 9, 9, 10, maybe start of 11, I used to use the word dream college a lot. Um, and in class 12, I was like, I'm not going to use the word dream college a lot because getting into a particular college is a dream that's too small for me. Like going to college for me is a means of achieving my dreams, but it should not be the dream, right? And that's something like thanks to the college application process, I realized as well. So I was obviously hurt. I wish I'd got into the colleges that I've gotten rejected or waitlisted from, but I was like relatively okay. Obviously, a large part of it was because I had gotten one acceptance right at the beginning. I feel like I'd be freaking out if I didn't get that. In fact, like I got rejected from so many places that the days of Stanford was my last decision. I think it was one of the last decisions for all colleges. It was right after IB day, and you know how you wake up at like 3:30 a.m. IST because the decisions come out like 5 p.m. US time. And you're really like, you can't sleep all night. A lot of people like record their decision reactions. I was doing that for all the colleges up until Stanford because I wasn't expecting much after like so many rejections. Um, I'd gotten into Vanderbilt before, and that was my 90 items. Like, I in fact even changed my laptop, desktop, like screen guard, and I put a picture of Vanderbilt. And I was like, okay, this is the next school for me. And then I didn't wake up at 3:30. I didn't put an alarm. I woke up, whenever I naturally just woke up. I was like, okay, this is the last like decision, the last time I'll see. I'm sorry to inform you. When I opened the application portal and there was confetti, and I was like, okay, what just happened? So it felt great. I'm glad things worked out the way they did, but like really, I know it's a lot easier for me to say now that if I didn't get into Stanford, I'd be okay with it. But I truly feel that after a while, I'd be okay with it. Again, just because of like this perspective that I don't think college is the end all. I definitely think going to a certain college gives you access to opportunities and resources and networks that not all colleges can. And I'm really grateful for my acceptance and I'm grateful for having the opportunity to go to Stanford. Um, but yeah, I'm just grateful for how everything worked out.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think that's really nice that you'd gone through that process of figuring out why you're applying to college and not having it just as like that one make or break thing, which really, if it doesn't happen, which invariably because I mean, everything is so competitive now. A lot of people applying aren't going to get in, right? Not because you're not good enough, but because of so many other factors which are just not in your control. And recognizing that it's not a reflection just of your ability, would be really powerful for anyone. But moving on slightly to a different topic, just for the benefit of our audience and for us also, seeing that you've achieved so much in these past few years with FullStopp and with college, with everything that you've been doing, just spreading awareness and like trying to make the world a better place. Do you also have guilty pleasures or things that you do just to take time off, which are completely unrelated to any of this? Just things that are just really random.
Oh, for sure. I have a bunch of them. Um, I read like those few stories, few books that you read in middle school, like not even like class A, just early middle school, like 5, 6, 7, which include books like Diary of a Dog Diary,
Famous five.
Twilight,
Uh,
Divergent. I think they're huge. Sorry,
no, no, go ahead. Yeah.
yeah. So those books, I feel like even today, when I just need to unwind, I will get my copy of the Twilight edition and just start reading. Uh, it's so embarrassing. I have not told a lot of people this, but yeah, that's something I do. Books like that, the Divergent series as well. Apart from that, I'm obsessed with watching the Olympics on YouTube.
Oh.
If you look at my YouTube search history, you will just like
Same.
2012 Olympics. Like I have the most random sports, right? It's not even like I'm watching
Same, same.
the more like
Yeah.
mainstream sports. I love watching Olympics. And I know that's really controversial to say right now because of like just the current scenario, like so much
Yeah.
happening. Um, but I just really like it. I will,
Yeah.
yeah, especially Winter Olympics. Like I feel like it's so underrated, but the sports are so cool. I waste a lot of time on YouTube watching that. But what about you? What are your
Yeah.
hobbies like?
Oh, I think my guilty pleasure is like thinking of ideas to start and never starting them, and like making like the whole plan, but never starting. Like right now, I think I have like 5 projects that are done in my head, but like I just need to start. Like the 5 minute thing, I need to do that very soon. I think I'm gonna do this after this podcast. But it's been such a great conversation, and it's yeah, we learned so much by just talking to you, and I think I want to ask you if you have a parting message for our audience, and also about unfairness. You spoke about how all of us were really privileged, and we're really grateful to be this privileged that we get to dream the things that we dream right now. I know a lot of people who I think are way better than me at CS, who won't get the opportunity to study at like any good US college, or won't even get the chance to like dream about these colleges like we do. So do you have any parting message, and what do you feel about unfairness?
So I think one thing, even I got wrong with privilege, and I'm also learning every single day, right? I'm literally like younger than you. You graduated a year before me. I don't want to sound all preachy and act like I know a lot. But I think with privilege, I used to feel really bad about my privilege, right? I used to keep questioning, have I done enough to deserve what I have? But with privilege, it's not about what you shouldn't have. It's that like what you have, everybody should have, right? Everybody should have that equal access to opportunities. So
Yeah.
instead of like, I used to like really feel really guilty. But instead of just feeling guilty, obviously you should acknowledge your privilege. But instead of just feeling guilty, there's so many things that you can do um, to make good use of your privilege and extend it to others, right?
Yeah.
Even just like during COVID, there's so much that people could do, even if it's smaller things, right? Like I am a big, like I'll really push for the small things, especially when you're this young, right? Even if it's just helping, like your domestic help register for like the COVID vaccine. Even if it's just helping, like let's say, like an elderly couple next to you order groceries online because it's not safe for them to step outside home. The small things really matter. Of course, if you are in a place and you have the platform and the capacity to do greater things, like definitely do it. Um, I think like yeah, like I think I've reiterated a couple of times already. Just about like starting where you are, using what you have, and doing what you can to create whatever impact you can in the world. Yeah.
Yeah, that's I think that's a wonderful parting message for all of our listeners and for us as well. Just starting doing whatever you can and not worrying about not doing too much or whatever. Just do whatever you can, and if we all do what we can, then I'm sure the world will be a much better place. But thank you so much for speaking to us, Anjali. For our audience, we will have links for Full Stop and for all the other things that Anjali mentioned in the description below. Please use that to check out Full Stop. It's a wonderful organization, and I'm sure you can find a lot of value in it. But we hope to see you again on the next episode. Once again, thank you, Anjali. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank
Thank
you
you
so
for
much.
everyone. Goodbye.
Bye.